There are only 6 people in the world, or so my expert today claims. Although it's probably more accurate to say 6 types of people, and my expert would accuse me of oversimplifying. Happy New Year's and welcome to the Just Dumb Enough podcast, a show that acknowledges no one is always an expert by dispelling misconceptions with real experts. I'm your host as always, Colton Petrie. My guest today is Dr. Philip Agrios. This clearly superior Dr. Phil is here to share his 3-decade journey that led him to the root of self-sabotage. He presents his findings and helpful wisdom on what we are all doing wrong, including me. Let's stop the sabotage. Welcome to the show, Dr. Philip Agrios.
Thank you, Colton. I appreciate being here. It's an honor.
Thank you. I appreciate having you here so much. I'm excited to hear what we get into. Why don't you introduce yourself a little bit for the audience?
Sure. So I'm a self-sabotage specialist, a business consultant, a international speaker, and a best-selling author. I used to be a chiropractor, used to practice as a chiropractor and a functional medicine practitioner. And my specialty was thyroid and autoimmune disease. And during my 35 years of practicing, I was able to discover and perfect a particular trait that we are born with. And I call it the inborn sabotaging trait. It doesn't undermine us, but it actually protects us from the very success that we seek, because that success subconsciously is more painful to achieve and or sustain. So we go back and do whatever we were doing. So again, it doesn't undermine us, but it's just the protection. So when you start to release your personal professional power and you hit that wall, your saboteur kicks in to protect you. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not an idiot or a loser or all the other 100 words we say to ourselves. You're just in protection. So imagine as you hit that wall, as you start to contract, imagine knowing that there's only one trait that you're born with that is causing you to then protect yourself. And then using what we call the T now method, the exact opposite, it immediately goes into growth. And now you're doing this 100% guaranteed and never fails.
Interesting. So, how'd you come across this trait? Like, where did you start seeing it in people?
I had first discovered a 6-step blueprint that nature uses to come back from her storms. And I realized those 6 steps are the same 6 steps are within us to solve any business or personal problem. And then when I looked at the steps and I put them to actually the opposite, because of it being a circle, it allowed me to find that there are only 3 basic principles of the universe. It's the director principle, the supplier principle, and the communicator principle. Because that's all we do. The atoms and the galaxies just direct, they supply, and they communicate, as well as ourselves. So I realized that instead of saying principles, I realized those 3 principles were within us, and I call them the traits because traits create our behavior. And when I found that, I was like, this is too simple. There's no freaking way. So I went out to try to disprove it. And over 30 years researching thousands and thousands of people, not only was able to prove it, we found a way to switch it off. And that way it gives us the ability that when you use the T-Now method or a particular thing called the antidote, when you use the antidote, it's the exact opposite to that trait. So it's impossible to self-sabotage yourself.
Gotcha. So, which of those 3 traits is it that's the problem child for us?
So we have all 3 within us,
Right.
because that's make up who we are. Once we take those 3 traits and place them in what we call a protective sequence, in those 3 positions, so you have a your superpower, then you have a bridge, and then you have the saboteur, which is the inborn sabotaging trait. And they work like a seesaw situation. So
Oh,
once we know that sequence, what I realized that there's only 6 sequences of human behavior, so there's only 6 people in the world. And when I realized that how those sequences, because once I know your sequence, I can tell you everything about you. If you had a significant other, I can tell you everything about them by asking you a couple of questions and never meet them, and then tell you how you two interact and never ask a question, because we've gotten to a point we know how each of those 6 people interact with each other.
interesting. I would not have thought that, but I suppose there's all kinds of things, out in the world where they're like, this is your type, this is your, lineup or whatever it is. So I guess it shouldn't surprise me that there's like a formula to humanity.
Yeah, and that's why it took 33 years to really figure this out.
Yeah, when I
And
could
it's
see you
so
being
simple.
surprised.
It's like this can't be this simple. And yeah, that's why it took me that long because my reputation is very important to me. So I don't say things unless I can prove them.
Right. No, I totally understand that. So, I mean, how do we like outline those? What's the process to say like, okay, this is my superpower?
So out of those director, supplier, and communicator within us, it will all depend because each one has its own traits and behavior, and how they come together allows that to it. So during our programs, we give people a quiz that gives them the ability to find that out, and then we go deeper and deeper with that aspect of it. Um, because sometimes it gets so simple, people can't understand it. It's really interesting. It's like I see this, but how's it affecting me here, here, here? And by them really taking that understanding, we've seen people shift their lives within an hour and a half to a few hours because now they're realizing this is what's been causing me to protect myself. But it goes much, much deeper, but at least they can kind of grasp of what's happening in that end of it.
Gotcha. I mean, obviously, you said it's kind of like a teeter totter. One end comes up, the other end kind of stays pivotal in the middle, and then there's the other end that's low. Are
Right.
there some people who have like a very skewed teeter totter, and the other people that are like pretty close to flat?
Very rarely. So if you are, first of all, you're never flat, you're always doing this, right? If you're this for the rest of your life, then you're not evolving. You're just staying where you're at. Because what I found was that the saboteur brings adversity and challenges into our lives to evolve. So the time when you hit that wall and you get upset, don't get upset. Get excited because you're ready to evolve. But because of it being uncomfortable on a subconscious level, we want to stay where we are because it's better than the unknown or whatever the case may be on that aspect of it. So in that end of it, you need to, it depends on how you react or not react. So there's two types of protection. So there's an over engagement protection and a withdrawal, right? Coming into that play. So depending, so let's say, you know, very easy. The one of them is, someone's coming at you, you're going to fight them, right? Or you yell and scream at the person first in order to get the edge on them first before they hurt you, right? Or somebody who overly talks and they can just say what's on their mind type of thing. There are other people where they're overly scattered. They're here, they're over engaging in too many things, right? Or there are people that will overly give. They'll just give too much because they don't value themselves and they give, and then realize people don't give back to them. So that's the over engagement. The withdrawal is about just people that are quiet and they'll just go within themselves and just kind of go in and try to figure things out. The other aspect of this is you can become very hyper focused. There are people that get so hyper focused they have a distortion of time. Hey, honey, I'll be out in 3 minutes, and 5 hours later they emerge, right? They're so into it because they got to get this done because most likely they waited to the last minute. Or the people that are taking, they take for themselves because they are feeling some type of fearing, because if they give, they get hurt. So they take for themselves. So depending on what your saboteur is and how that reacts to it will depend on whether you overly engage or under engage. It all depends. And that's why it looks different, but it's the same thing over and over again. And what the T-Now method does is instantly allows that balance to happen.
So we're actually looking for like a true balance instead of, trying to like lift one and rate or drop the other kind of a thing.
Yeah, because you never get rid of the saboteur. You don't want to get rid of the saboteur because that's your protector. It'd be stupid, right?
Right.
So by having to understand that this is here for me, it's not happening to me, it's happening from me, through me, and for me. So one of the questions that your audience can ask themselves, as well as yourself, at that moment when things are not going right, you feel out of flow, you're feeling stressed, resistive, whatever that word and feeling feels like. Why am I protecting myself at this moment in time? It's a great question. Why am I protecting myself at this moment in time? You're yelling at your kids, right? Well, you're yelling at kids because you're what? Protecting yourself from the emotion, as well as you may be yelling at them because you're trying to protect them, going, wake up. Are you stupid or something, right? How many parents have said that type of thing, right? The client to the coach or to anything, right? It's how are you protecting yourself? Was it something that your mom said to you? You know, a lot of women will come to me and say, you know, if I don't do this, I'm a horrible mom. I said, well, yeah, it's your mom or your grandmother gave you that thought process, but that was in the 1920s and 30s and the 50s, whatever, and doesn't relate to what's happening now. Because I know well that if they were here now in their thought process of you, they wouldn't be thinking that way either. So it's your perception of how you're feeling about it and how you act upon that.
Well, it's very interesting because the human reaction seems to be like, let me avoid all discomfort, right? Like, I don't want to engage with that. I want to be comfortable all the time. And yet, if you really think about the people who we see all the time that are really successful, like they're actively uncomfortable a lot of the time.
Yeah, I've never met a person who was not successful that didn't go through a lot. Oh, he was lucky. I love the quote from Nightingale Coton, not Nightingale, Earl Nightingale. Those of you who don't know who Earl Nightingale is, he has been the godfather of motivational speaking. He's great. You look him up, his voice is phenomenal. And he stated that there's no such thing as luck. Luck is when preparedness meets opportunity, and opportunity is always there. So it's you being prepared for that situation. So, to your audience, those of you who think that life should be fine and great all the time, then you don't know why you're here. You're here for the contrast. You're here for the challenges because life would be so boring. Say that again. Life would be boring without the challenges. Yeah, but I wish I didn't have all that. Well, it's coming to you for a reason, right? So it's not happening to you, like I said, it's coming from you, through you, and for me. Here, this is what I believe, and this is what I see consistently with the thousands of people I've worked with. The people and the events outside of you is you. The person you can't stand is a part of you you can't stand. They're just showing up to show you. That's why you're pissed off at them. How dare you show up to show a part of me that I can't deal with? And I've had people go, there's no way that person's like me. And they would go a little technique I would give them, and 100% of the time they would always see, my goodness, they are. This is trying to tell me what is going on with me because the universe doesn't speak English or Japanese or anything like that. It speaks experience. So if you're asking and praying for something and something comes that you're not expecting, you're expecting, well, this should happen. Well, that's not usually then going to happen. When it hits that, the question is, okay, what are you trying to tell me? If you write that sentence down again, from why am I protecting myself from this experience, but what is it trying to tell me? And when you start doing that and seeing it, things start to shift for you as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, how do we make that move to kind of embrace this? To say, like, okay, we can prepare for, as much as we want, but sometimes the world is chaos and it'll throw things at you that you never prepared for. So, how do we just kind of, when we see it coming, just go, all right, this is the new thing, and we just roll with it? Like, instead of being, frozen and get that analysis paralysis or whatever it is that happens to people where we just lock up.
Yeah, well, since they're not going to know their antidote, one of the things is a great technique that I give my clients is that I want you to go back over the last year, 2 years, and truly do this. If you're really, really serious about this, write down all the quote problems you thought that were going to happen, all the things you worried about. Let me know which ones actually happened. And out of the ones that actually happened, which ones were a detriment to you, like really bad. And usually it's less than 1%. So when something happens, instead of getting upset about it, because when you get upset about it, you don't think properly. You do things maybe too fast or whatever the case may be, compared to just kind of go with the flow with it, right? It's called being with it. It's not sitting on the couch eating chips. I'm just gonna wait until it happens, right? You're just being and then just going through how it's looking, how it's feeling, and how I act upon it, and that end of it, and just go, okay, if it's going to happen, I'll deal with it then. And until that time, it's an illusion. If you can predict that every time, please tell me the lottery numbers for the next lottery. I would love to know them, right? Because when you go into your future, or when you go into your past, you leave your present state. So your body actually thinks that the future or the past challenge that you're thinking about or feeling about is actually happening. So your cortisol levels and everything else starts to kick in. So you feel lousy, you go eat more food or other drinks that's going to kind of reinforce what you're feeling. So why wouldn't the same thing happen if you're feeling that way, that experiences come in to reinforce the vibration that you're having?
Interesting. And I mean that retrospective to say, like, look at your real past challenges and which ones were truly bad, because it feels like we fixate on those, right? We're like, that one really, truly bad thing that happened. But if you wrote down all this stuff throughout the year and then look back at, you're like, well, this one actually resolved and it was fine. And this one, didn't go anywhere. I just thought it was going to be an issue. And like, yeah, that one was bad, but this one actually turned out good. Like, we would rebalance those scales a lot.
Hmm. Yeah, I give my clients I call it the 30-day no worry challenge. No matter what happens, you don't worry about it for 30 days, no matter what. Now, again, you're not sitting on the couch eating chips, okay? You're just staying in a more calm state and just doing it and not worry about it. Even little stuff like this morning, never did this. I'm working on something and I went to grab my mic to bring it over to me and I hit my protein shake all over the carpet. Usually, way back, it would be like, "Die." And I just looked at it and I went, okay. And I got up, got the stuff, and right. And a little bit in my inside of me, I wanted like you dump like, and I'm like, no, just go. It just happened. No big deal. And I'm like, I need to get this. And I'm like, just it's okay. Let's just deal with this today. Dealt with it. Actually, it only took about 15 minutes or so, 15, 20 minutes. So it wasn't as bad as I'm thinking I'm losing 5 hours on this whole thing, right? So even those little things, I remember something happened when I did this. And I actually I do this as well, guys. So I just don't give things to my clients and I don't do it myself. And when I first did this, as soon as I said that, okay, I'm not worrying because I was going through a divorce and a lot of stuff. I went through a lot of stuff. And at that moment, I was like, okay, I'm done. Like 2 days later, something happened. So, well, that was quick. And I'm like, I'm not going to worry. Nothing happened. And then something major hit within a week. And I looked at it, I'm not going to worry about it. Just not going to worry about it. And what happened was, before the day before this thing was going to happen, I came up with an idea and I was able to thwart the problem. Now, I know if I was stressed out and worried about it, I would have not come up with that. So I used to say when I was going through all the traumas and all the stuff that I was going through, I used to say, I wonder what gift I'm getting. I wonder what gift I'm getting. Man, I can't wait to see what this gift's going to be. And I would focus on that because when the problem starts, there's always a solution. So when you focus on the problem, you re-enhance the problem. But when you focus on the solution, I wonder what gift I'm getting. This is going to be good. Then you walk into the solution. Then I realized it wasn't what gift I'm getting. I got the gift already. It was my job now to find out what was I given through the experience that I was going through. And then I would realize, oh, that's why, and then I would put other things into place so that never happened again. So that's when you are in a more of a calmer state, a more balanced state, that things come to you. You start to see things in a much more different way, feel things in a different way, and then you'll act differently.
Gotcha. And that kind of reinforces, like, yeah, how much of an ability you have to do these things. Because I always considered myself like the classic procrastinator, where I'm like, I wait till the last minute for everything. And I realized as we're talking about this, I'm like, realistically, I wait until the last minute because I've got other things to do. And so I'm like, I just do other stuff. And then when that thing shows up, I'm like, okay, well, I've got 8 hours and I know I can do it in 8 hours. So I'm going to do it. And it's like a mildly stressful 8 hours, but I get to the end of it and I'm like, oh, see, totally did it. Didn't need to worry about time.
Yeah, because procrastination is a protection. It's more painful to do that now than to wait until it's more painful not to do it. So it depends on the pain.
Yeah.
Depends on right now it's uncomfortable. I don't do it. I don't know what to do. I don't have enough knowledge, so I freeze, or I don't trust myself enough, or it's just going to be boring and detailed, and I just don't want to do it. Well, then delegate it, automate it, or eliminate it, right? Depends on what you want to do with that. So at that moment, instead of taking 8 hours of your day, because what happens is something happens that is more important than now you got a problem. So what happens is then you can just break it up and compartmentalize that so that you don't allow other things to get out of hand. Because now once you're done with that, then you go, "Oh, I got everything else." And then you go back and you're all scattered because there's that scatteredness and then hyper focus going back and forth. That's a particular saboteur that you are. That's there to protect you. So when you go into chaos, it stimulates your dopamine because it makes you get things done. Because if you didn't have the chaos, Colton, let me ask you a question. If you had the chaos a lot, would you get things done or would you kind of really wait the last minute? So you bring that in to force you to do it compared to, hey, if I use my antidote and T now method, now the chaos drops tremendously. And now I'm not hyper focusing for a long period of time, or I'm not scattered for a more long period of time. I find the balance between the two.
Yeah. And I really think I'm one of those, number one, like if I'm given a schedule where it's like this thing needs to be done in this hour and this thing will be done in the next hour unless, you can't, whatever. I think that's where I like actually work really well because I'm like,
You
oh,
need structure.
everything has structured timelines. But I'm
Right, but
also
structure isn't comfortable for you at times.
right. Yeah, structure is very uncomfortable for me.
Yeah. Don't tell me what to do. And
Yeah.
that's part of what that you don't like to be told what to do. It's like you don't like the responsibility of being accountable because that means I can't do it.
Yeah.
Because if I do structure, I can't do what I really want to do, which is maybe play video games or other things like that. I'm not saying you do that. But if you stop and go, look, I have a responsibility. Here's the key. With that situation, and it's not just you, and don't take it personally,
Sure. No.
it's everybody, right? If at that moment you said, I'm going to get this done between 1 and 2, and 1 o'clock comes and you don't want to do it or you don't do it, you just lied to yourself. You did not stay in integrity with yourself. So next time, before you say one, I'm going to do this, see, will I truly do this? Because I don't want to lie to myself. I have to stay integral. No one else will know. No, I tell my kids, when you get to the point when no one knows what you're doing, but you do, and you still stay in integrity, then you're in true integrity. Not because someone's looking at you, it's that you're looking at you.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's one of those like real characters when no one's watching kind of a
Hmm.
thing.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
I'm on. I got to do it now.
Yeah.
No one's watching. Phew. Now I can be somebody that I tell people I am, but I'm not. And it's just staying in that true integrity, which is
Yeah.
hard many times.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's easy for us to like we do it so often that lie becomes easy. Where you're like,
Yeah.
well, I'll do it in an hour. And then you look up the clock and it's been 2 hours and you're like, oh, I guess I didn't do it, but I'll do it in another hour. And you just like keep that cycle going until it's natural.
Right. So let me ask you a question. If 1 to 2, if you did this, you got $1 million, would you not set your alarm? Would you not do it? Would you forget about it, or would you get it done?
Right. Yeah. You'd get it done immediately. You'd be like, all right,
So
this thing's gotta
that
happen.
Right. So that is how you need to focus on you. That $1 million is you staying integrity with yourself will make you feel better, increases your vibration, and new opportunities come in because it has to. It's law.
Interesting. So, how do you see this most commonly, like in people's lives? Is it a professional thing or is it their interpersonal life?
It's everywhere because your personal life and your professional life are one. So when you use your saboteur, both are affected at the exact same time. And when you use the antidote, the T now method, both are affected at the exact same time. So I'll give you a story. I had a guy who was taking my workshop, And he came up to me and goes, this is really great. I'm really seeing this. And he says, my son's always upstairs playing video games. I can't get him downstairs to interact with the family. What can I do? So I asked him a few questions. We ascertained his son's sequence, and I told him exactly what to do. Within a week, his son was downstairs interacting with the family, and he realized that he was pushing his son in the room based on what his antidote and saboteur were. He was making fun of him and everything else because that's how he grew up. That's how he got motivated. But it was actually causing a reverse because his son was a different saboteur. Once he started doing what I was telling him to do, his son felt better and their relationship skyrocketed within a couple of months. And then realized that he was doing it in his business. So as he realized that as he was doing it, the same thing in his business, he shifted it and the business started to increase. So your professional and your personal are one. They always are. I just have a new client yesterday, and I was asking him, and he says, I said, no, everything personally is great. Business, we got the problem in the business. When we got to the personal was not in tune. The same thing that was happening in his business was happening in his personal life. It was really interesting. And he was like, oh my God, I never saw that. I can see how I'm doing that. And a lot of times, what people do in what they do in the business, they can do the opposite in their personal life. So it all depends based on their saboteur as well as what's happening with that particular situation. So different situations will react differently in different degrees. It seems different, but it's the same three acting. It's just one may be doing this and the other one's doing this. So you think this is different than this, but no, this one's up here, this one's down here, but the other situation, this one's here, this one's here. Another situation, now this one comes here, but they're still interacting in a way, they're just on the opposite side. It's like one day you'll be overly scattered, you'll be hyper focused because you're overly controlling too much. And then you don't control enough in your emotions and your feelings get all up in a tizzy, and then you don't do what you need to do.
Yeah, there's a lot of self-regulation that goes into this where you're like, you have to be fully aware of yourself at all times because if you stop thinking about what's happening to you, for you, or from you, like you'll just kind of cause one of these to like escalate really dramatically.
You could, or our goal is for you to use the antidote and the T9 method more on a subconscious level than using the saboteur on the subconscious level. The more you use it, because what we found by using it on a conscious level, the antidote, it actually shifts your subconscious. So when you bring that into now more naturally, clients will come and say, wow, I would have done this and I did this instead. Because you got to realize this. You had said something in the past, and I meant to talk on it. When people go, well, I did this and I did this and that didn't work out. I want you guys to realize that was the old you, not the person that you are now. So when you go through that, this person's not doing this and I'm not doing that, it's because the old you were doing it. The question is the old you still you? Or have you at least changed a little bit? And now what would the new you do differently than the old you?
And that really is like we focus on, when you talked about like getting stuck in the past and it's like we're experiencing that moment again, we really experience that past moment, in two different ways as the way we experienced it, the person we used to be, and then the person we are now who's like, you were an idiot. And you're like, well, that's experience talking. Like you have, 20 years of life experience since that thing happened. You're a different person now. Like that should be a realization. And yet we're like, man, I was so dumb and I'll never fix it. And you're
Yeah.
like, well, you already fixed it. Like you now fixed it.
Yeah, because we just feel that's a part of us. And it always is a part of us. It never goes away. See, you never have a lack of confidence. You have the confidence, you're just using the other side of it. I'm going to say that again. I have a lack of money. No, you have the ability to make the money. You're just tapping into the other part that continues to stay in that lack of money or the anger or whatever the case may be, right? Everything is within you. You're Mother Teresa, you're the mass murderer, you are the loving person, you're the hating person, you're the ugly person, you're the beautiful person. Everything's within you. It's up to you what you want to tap in to show yourself and the world.
Interesting. I mean, we talked about, like there's basically six people, right? Those are the types. Do we see them in equal amounts, or are they like really heavily weighted? You're like, this one shows up a lot. Like that's the most common type of person.
Um, I never did that back when over the years with researching with my clients. It's different because a lot of them are business owners, executives, entrepreneurs. So we see a mixture of them. So I haven't really empirically looked at that, but if I looked at it, um, I wouldn't be able to talk on that because I don't have any empirical data on this. But if I look at it all, we do see the sequences come up. But again, if you're a person who is quiet, they may not join something. So, but they're there, right? But they're not joining a program because they're quiet and they're reserved, or whatever, compared to somebody who has no problem. So, yeah, I never did a mass research project like that, but it's a great question.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those that would be hard. I mean, if you're working mostly with, business owners and CEOs and these kind of, high level people, that would skew your data to say, like, well, in CEOs, we see this type of person, but
They're all over the
outside of
place.
them, maybe
Yeah,
not.
they're
Like,
different.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's why we just launched my membership. So now we have, it's not just about a premium coaching. We can now anybody can take and understand their sequences and stuff through our membership, so at a very reasonable price. So, from that's why one of the things I did that is because of vets. We've had PDS D vets take the program, do very, very well, and we want to help them in that end of it. But I've helped save marriages. We've helped parent-child relationships. We've helped so many different things. So I have this strong responsibility because I found this and no one else has this. I mean, this is totally different. There's nothing like this in the world. I feel this high responsibility that I have to get this out to the millions. So we just started last month with the membership, and so we have different types. We go into companies with our workshop or our businesses. We have a premium coaching, and then we have now the membership. So we kind of span out to different people. So it'll be really great to see there with the membership. We can probably do some type of survey to kind of get an idea once we get enough people in the membership.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I mean, this must have come to you kind of as that challenge, right? Like we've talked about things show up and you're like, oh no, this is a big project. This is a big thing. You're like, hey, I just learned all of this stuff. Now the challenge is I have to share it.
Yes,
And you're like, okay,
absolutely.
great, let's do this.
Yeah.
Because I can't imagine that's been comfortable. You have to like, go out and sell yourself and, a product, a method, like all of these things. And you have to like sell it to people who are self-sabotaging
Well, here's the
while like
beauty of it.
trying to help.
So here's the beauty of it. I don't sell. So one of the things through the six-step blueprint, we also teach them sales, right? I have a six-step blueprint of sales. They're not techniques of like, oh, you got to do this to manipulate the person to do it. It's just having conversations and understanding the person and why they're resisting themselves as well yourself. And one of the things is just like with my premium coaching, if you have money and you breathe, does not mean you get into my program. We go through a process to see if you're a candidate. So one of the things is that I want to make sure, because I'm very protective of my group, that these are the right people. And when I started doing that and just having conversation and saying no to people, right, because I didn't think they were a good fit or they didn't think they were a good fit and we're fine with it, instead of getting upset and everything else, things to start again. Your vibration changes. So now you start attracting people that are good candidates because that's what you're looking for and not somebody that you're trying to force this on or you're trying to make a sale and all this other stuff. So yeah, we just have conversations with people and majority of them will sign up if they can financially afford it. If not, then we bring them down into the membership.
Yeah.
So
Interesting. Is it kind of almost magnetic? Like once you've fixed yourself and you've stopped sabotaging, do you kind of attract people that like either need your help or the people who have already found themselves in those positions? Like does one or the other just kind of bounce off you?
yeah, it's again, I do self-sabotage because I do protect myself. So I will have situations like I could have had a freak out just over a spilt protein shake, right? Or situation happen with one of my daughters, right? And I could be like, God, and I was just like, all right, well, let's just deal with it because I've done it so long, knowing and doing the work of going, if I get upset, I can't think properly. Okay. So if I catch myself quick enough, that's the thing, is catching yourself quick enough. I don't care if you go if you're upset, you go into the corner and you take your pillow and you suck your thumb and you're in a fetal position on the floor. I'm good with that. And you're looking like, what are you talking about? I'm good with that because that's how you protect yourself. The problem comes is how long are you there for? So when you go into self-sabotage, that's fine. You're protecting yourself. That's a good thing. But how long are you there for? If you start to procrastinate, it's a good thing. Something's wrong. What's going on? Why am I like this? I always do this. Well, maybe it's time for me to really sit down and be aware of what the hell I'm doing. All right, great. Now you're only there for 2 minutes, 3 minutes compared to now 3 weeks. And now you have to now take 8 hours your day cramming in, and hopefully nothing else comes in to mess up that 8 hour. So see the difference. It's just how you perceive it, how you feel it, and how you act upon it. And again, do I have my times? Yeah, like just before here, my daughter calls, and she's going, I'm coming over with Nala, her dog, right? Just before I'm getting on with the podcast, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, you're going to walk through this door, and I'm like, you just tell me, and I got like a little upset because I got like, I got to get this, and I was just like, okay, do not come after, you got to come at this time because I don't want this interview be interrupted. But I could have been upset. I could have yelled. Yeah, did I have that moment? I had the moment. I'm human. Don't tell anybody I'm human. It's just between us. But I had that. But it's how quickly can you shift from the extremes to the balance? And that's what's fun about it. Dance with your challenges. Don't fight them. If you're going down a river and you know the river is going to the ocean where you want to be, don't fight it. Just let it happen. Now, if a boulder is coming at you, you just go, okay, I'm just going to be and let it smash you. You're going to do. You're going to do some things to avoid it. Maybe you brush against it or something like that where you have been hurt, but you did get something. A challenge did hurt you, but it allowed you to realize, hey, look ahead, knowing what to, maybe instead of being here, I should be in a raft, going down the ocean. Maybe next time I'll stop and get the raft. Oh, no, I'm good. I'm not going to ask anybody for any help, all those things. And that's what the key is for you to realize, how am I self-sabotaging myself? How am I self-protecting myself? And that's what self-sabotage is. The procrastinations, the self-doubt, the imposter syndrome, the anxiety. Anxiety is just a protection. All the other things, depression and sadness, right? A lot of times it's not depression. It's very rarely it's depression if you got a diagnosis. It's usually sadness. Well, why am I sad? Why am I fearing of aloneness or other things? So it's okay, why is this experience here and how can I evolve from it? When you evolve, you have to dissolve. And when you dissolve, you evolve. They both happen at the exact same time. Which side you want to look at? When things are falling apart, they're also falling together. What side do you want to look at? You have the north hemisphere and the southern hemisphere within you. If you're freaking cold, then move to the southern. It's there. Both opposites are within you. What side do you want to focus on and manifest?
Well, and it seems like a lot of people, I really love this river analogy. A lot of people kind of find themselves in the river and they see like, two options. Like I could swim against the current, right? Like I could try and swim upstream, which is the most futile version of whatever you're doing. Or, well, I don't want to be doing things this way. I want to do them X, Y, or Z way. And they like swim out of the river and then walk the rest of the way, like adjacent to the river. And you're like, you could have used a lot less energy to just kind of, go with what was happening and make minor adjustments.
Right. And if you go and you see a waterfall and you're going to plummet to your death, yeah, then it's time to swim for your life and whatever the case may be. But if you really look at the last 2 years, when did you really have to do that?
Right. Like you said, it's 1% of the time. The
Yeah,
the
or
river
less.
is 1% or less waterfall.
Yeah, right. But there's got to be a waterfall. There's a river. Okay, can you prove that? Maybe it is, but maybe it's 50 miles down the down the road there. You got plenty of time to get out and do whatever you have to do. So, yeah.
Well, and that kind of leads to catastrophizing. I know a lot of people do that mentally where they're like, they go to the worst case scenario immediately.
Hmm.
And you're like, okay, there's a waterfall. That's the catastrophe. It's 50 miles away, and you're only going to be in the river for 30 miles. So the waterfall should be a non-issue to you. Like it doesn't really exist. Like it's in your path, I guess, but you'd actually have to work to get to that result.
Yeah, it's still going back in your past and going to the future. You have to leave they become your present. So now your body and mind really think it's happening. It's how they protect themselves. They overengage immediately. How is this working out for me? Well, obviously, it's working out great for you. You got diabetes, you're stressed out, you can't see, you got this, you got chronic pain. It's working great for you.
Yeah. How many issues do you currently have? How many would you like to have? Which direction in the river is that?
Absolutely.
So, what do you do? Obviously, we can like kind of fix our present self, right? Don't stress. Like, I knocked over my drink. You know what? It's not that big of a deal. Like, I got plenty of time. I'll clean it up. Not going to worry about it. Like, that's great for the present us and the future us because we'll be, in that state still when we get there. What do we do about like the past that really like that 1% or less that has really bothered us where we're like, I truly goofed really hard. Like, I made
Well,
an absolute mistake.
one of the best ways that I know that I teach is find the benefit out of it. If you can find the benefit out of the situation in the past, some type of benefit, then there's no need to be upset about it. You can let it go. There's no need to forgive that person or that person to forgive you. You benefited from it as much as they benefited. They may not see that they benefited from it, and you can see it, but it's like this happened in order for us to evolve, and I can see the evolution. Yes, did it dissolve our relationship? And maybe it needed to resolve our relationship, or you know, uh, someone passed passed. Okay, so how can you take a benefit of someone who passed away? There are many, many people that have taken situations like that. For instance, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, right? When you had Carrie Lightner, when she was killed by a drunk driver in the 70s. Now, her mother could have done three things. She could have just been angry and hateful and just let her destroy her life. Number two, she could have gone into drinking and other things like that, or whatever, or just be out vocal, but nothing happening. The third thing was she actually did something to change the law. Now, were all the other parents prior that children who died were horrible people or they were lazy? No, it's that it wasn't their time. It wasn't what they needed to do, right? But it got to a point where it was a part of it that kind of finally popped out, and she changed the law. So even though she'd missed her daughter and everything else, she took something and changed it into a benefit, so she did not die in vain. So that's an extreme, right? So again, how can I find the benefit out of this? And I've dealt with people with certain situations that once they found the benefit, they were able to let that go or not fully let it go, but they used it as a catalyst to do something else. How many people are now doing things and impacting millions of people based on something horrific that happened to them?
I could see this being really common, like especially, like that's the extreme end. I think the most common I hear from people on a regular basis is probably like the past relationship where they're like, "Oh, I made this mistake or they made this mistake and if we just hadn't done it, we'd still be together." And then I ask them, usually this is how it goes. And I'm like, "Are you happy where you are? Like you're with someone else. Like, are you happy about that?" And they're like, "Yeah, absolutely. I love this person."
Mhm.
I'm like, "Okay, are they pretty happy where they are?" And they're like, "Yeah, they're married now and it's great." I'm like, "Okay, well then it sounds like that was actually a net positive for both of you." Like
Right. Yeah,
you see
exactly.
it as a
Why
bad
not
thing,
three?
but like you both actually benefited.
Absolutely. And that's where when you can benefit from something, it's then no longer it's still a part of you, but you can now move forward and use it to impact other people based on it. All the stuff that ever happened to me, I would not be here talking to you if it didn't happen. I have no regret. I don't truly have any regret for all the things that happened to me. Now, once in a while, does it hit me? I'm like, oh, God. And I just go, I love you, man. I love you, man means, you know what? I see it. I'm good with it. I love you. And let's move forward.
Yeah.
And that's how quickly I can get out of thinking of a situation pretty quickly.
Well, and that's a good way to do it, to have like a, a positive statement that's just like, hey, it's not a big deal. You know what? We both got through it. You past me and current me, like we both got through it just fine.
A great question as well for the past is, oh, I wish I had a mother that was loving. And my question and I just did this with one of my clients, was if your mother was loving to you, what would you have lost? And she was like, what? I said, if your mother was loving the way you wanted your mother to be, what would you have lost? And she started naming, yeah, I wouldn't be as determined. I wouldn't be the mother that I am today, and all these other things. And I said, can now close your eyes. Can you see your mother? Now thank her. She did you a favor. And it was just like the woman just started to cry. She was like, I'd never had that experience before. So taking that technique and doing it for yourself, and if it's hard to find a benefit, ask somebody who's a friend of yours or somebody who who backs you, not somebody who is going to cause a problem for you,
Right.
but someone who supports you truly, like unconditionally, and let them show you maybe what they see and kind of sit on it and marinate with it and see if you can adopt it yourself.
Right. Say it to your logical friend and not your devil's advocate friend.
Or do it that way, and they'll be happy to tell you how horrible you are.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think this happens, like I see it in online conversations all the time where people say, if you could time travel to your past self and change something, would you? And people will most of the time say no because they realize like the impact that would have. Like, well, if I didn't have this job, I wouldn't have these friends. And if I didn't have these friends, I wouldn't have all these great memories that I have right now. So no, even though that thing was terrible, like I wouldn't change it because I liked the outcome. Whereas the people who say like, yes, I would absolutely go back and change something, usually the rest of the group will like talk them down from that, where they're like, I don't think that's actually what you want. Like list the good things in your life and then take them away.
Well, I would tell that person going, okay, you go back and change it, you still end up in the same place because that's where you need to be. And that's what you're trying to evolve from. So
Yeah.
that's what I tell them.
Yeah. You're like the time machine's useless. Don't worry about it.
That's why they're not there, I guess.
Right. You just give yourself, I love you, man, and
Yeah,
then move
exactly.
forward. Well, I mean, that's wonderful. Do you find a lot of people come to you like thinking they know how they're self-sabotaging and they have a misconception about the entire idea of how it works?
Yeah. What happens is a lot of them come to me and say, this is what because I asked them, what do you think you're doing? And the majority of times it's their superpower that's tripping them up. And that's why they're not changing because they're not getting to the true cause of it. And some will hit that and then they'll take the course and then they'll say to me, I knew this, but now I'm able to grasp it. I'm able to do something with it. Before they didn't know what to do with it. So that's usually the majority of it. Your superpower is tripping that up, or you know it, but you don't know how to balance it. You don't know the antidote through that, and you can't grasp it because
Yeah.
you're too close to it.
Yeah. Well, and that really like it takes outside perspective, right? You got to have things that, like your data where you're like, you're going to take this test. The test
Right.
is not bias in any
Yeah,
way whatsoever. It doesn't care who you are. Like it's
exactly.
going to figure it out.
Absolutely.
That's great. And I mean, it feels like one of those where if you hear there's six types of people, I could imagine somebody saying, like, I wish I was a different type. And you're like, well, no, you don't. Like, none of them are inherently better than the others, right? Like, they're just six combinations of things. You
Right. That
don't,
you're born with that. That's what you experience. It's like does a flower open up its petals? It's red and it's in this particular location and there's no bees. Does it shut down and go, I should have been blue? I should have been born over there. I knew I should have been. No, it just keeps on opening up, trusting that it will get fertilized.
It's where it needs to be when it needs to be there.
Yes.
Well, and that's a powerful lesson, I think, on life, right? Like wherever you are right now in your life, you need to be here because assumably, like you've got things you need to grow from, and they probably are awful to you. You're like, oh no, all these struggles that I have to deal with. And really to like take the entire summary of this interview and say, like, what are you supposed to be learning right now? Like, you're supposed to be growing. Like, this is your opportunity to be so much better than you are currently. That's a really powerful thing to do.
Yeah. And what we find is just the one thing, your saboteur. All those things that are happening to you comes down to just one thing. And that's why for 33 years, I'm like, this can't be this simple. There's no way. And to this point, no one's ever disproven it. So it always comes down to this one thing. This one thing created your past, it created your present, and it's going to create your future. So realize that once you know what this is, it's up to you how to shift it. And if it does come in, how long are you going to stay in that protection and start acting upon it and go into growth?
Yeah. Well, and that makes me oddly comforted, like in the uncomfortable moments, to know that, like, hey, this all comes down to one thing. Like, it's always the same thing. You just haven't figured it out yet. So you see a million problems, but you're like, if you really got the core of this and took that antidote, like, you'd be fine because you
Yeah,
know what that thing is.
absolutely.
And that's very comforting. I've appreciated this. Why don't you tell people, where they can go, where they can take the class or the guidance or all these other things if they're looking for more from you?
Yeah, they can reach out and I'm on all the social media platforms. They can go to the website. We can go to transcendnow.biz. That's transcendnow.biz. Or um, we have the tnowmasterclass.com. It's a 12-minute video that business owners, executives, entrepreneurs, or sales professionals may want to look at. It goes a little deeper what we were talking about. Or even people that are looking to go from a higher career, get promotions to a career, or maybe go from a career to a business and they're kind of stuck. That's really, or they can always go to the T Now Method, thetnowmethod.com, and sign up on our waiting list when we open up our membership again. But I'm on the internet.
Fantastic. And I will put all those in the show notes so they're easy to access. Like if you're like me, don't worry about spelling because I've proof checked them. So they're idiot proof and we're just going to get you right to where you need to be. You also have a book that kind of like if people want to dive into, your research, like you said, 33 years of looking at this, there's a book as well, right?
Yeah, it's called Life's One Law. They can access it through the website. We give them a gift with it instead of just going to Amazon. But it's Life's One Law. It goes through the 6 steps that I discovered and how that worked with human nature. And then near the end is talks about the saboteurs a bit. And that's why the second book is being written now to be a little bit more focused on the saboteurs instead of the blueprint.
Fantastic. Well, we'll look forward to that. Maybe we'll have you back just to discuss the saboteurs in depth.
That'd be great. Well, Colton, thank you so much. I really appreciate this.
Yes, I've appreciated your time immensely. This has been super fun. Thank you so much for being here.
I had a blast.
Honestly, Dr. Phil is a fun guy, but seemed a bit hesitant to give away too much of his system. That might be because if we figure it out, we don't need to pay for the coaching, but it's impossible to know. In other news, 2025 is here as of tomorrow, and I'm a little shocked it's gone by so quick. But here are the last rankings of the year. Number 1, the United States, with Oregon, California, and Texas at the very top. Number 2, England of the United Kingdom. Number 3, Australia, with Queensland just edging out New South Wales. Number 4, Canada, with Ontario holding the crown. And number 5, Ghana, having spent most of 2024 in the top 5. That's it for this week and this year. Have a great week and great last day. I'll see you all next year, as they say, for another new episode. Until that next episode, pretty please do all those things that help the show grow, like rating, reviewing, liking, and subscribing. Also remember you can reach out to me at dumbenoughpodcast@gmail.com or on any of the social media pages, if you want to reach me personally, that is. Lots more fun updates and travel things going on next year, but we'll talk about that when we get there. Most importantly, stay dumb.